meeting that?
I guess.
Okay.
So don't they have a clicker that we can use in that? Oh, okay. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know, you may want to go and sit there so you can see it,
Oh, okay.
or else you're gonna be looking backwards
Yeah, I could do that.
after you open the meeting.
Yes. Which is about time right now. No, not quite. Mayor Jacobson, huh? Good evening, everybody. It is January 12th at 5:15 for the January meeting of the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance. I welcome everybody, and we will start this meeting out with agenda item number 1, presentation and discussion on engineering site evaluation options at 1110 West Street, 710 South 10th Avenue, and 710 South 10th Avenue Ironworks property for the new DPW fleet maintenance facility. And with that, I will turn it over to Barrientos.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Norman Barrientos, architect, and I am the owner and principal architect of Barrientos Design and Consulting in Milwaukee. And briefly, I'm an architect with 40 years of experience, and I have spent the majority of my career on public works, operations, and maintenance facilities. This is my specialization. And we have done work all over Wisconsin for counties and cities on this type of project. We have focused our company on developing design standards and industry knowledge and benchmarks on how to make operations and maintenance garages better, and focused on the future in terms of operations efficiency, staffing, and their equipment. So I'm going to talk about what we have evaluated to date. I'm going to start back a bit. We were first hired in 2018 to look at the Myron Street facility and develop a facility needs, space needs assessment, and look at how to modernize, upgrade, and make the public works operations more efficient and operating to current standards. And we also looked at the condition of the garage that's there on Myron Street and looked at what needed to be repaired, modified, upgraded, or code compliant. And that was $2.3 million, and this is 2018 dollars. That was just to, over the next 10 years, to maintain the yard and building as is and keep it working, functioning, and code compliant. So, but even with that 2.5 or 2.3 million that the city may invest in keeping that shop operating, it would not address the spatial operational needs of housing all the trucks, the bulk equipment, all the crews that operate out of there, and particularly the fleet maintenance activities that operate in that facility. So at the optimal facilities study indicated that we need 101,000 square feet of a facility versus the 83,000, and a lot of that was in parking and the repair garage. And we also looked at the site, and it's a very a jammed site, and to add more facilities, and we looked at more parking, more fleet repair area, the site would become very tight. There was a lot of tight building distances or creating blind corners when you drive around, and it would require to buy more land. And as we found out, that's an economic, social issue of buying up land in that area. But we did look at that, and even with buying additional land, it was still a very tight site. And the site is next to the river. It's in a floodplain zone. And our only way we could move expand the facility to be toward the river, and we'd have to fill up the site and level it out and put about 4 feet of grade on top of what's there right now. The other thing is, as you know, the waterworks facility has expanded too, and we're in a way competing for land with them at this point too. So moving on from there, in 21, there was a study by Mercury Fleet Management, and they recommended that the city split the motor pool operations. So your mechanics, your repair bays, and all their parts that they have be in its own operational unit. And that's not part of my study per se, but it coincided with or gave us the idea, and the study team, well, let's move out motor pool to another site and look at just finding a site for them. Now, one thing, thank you, is one thing I didn't put up there is we did look at sites for just the whole DPW operation, fleet and operations, I'll call it that, streets. And that was a 19-acre site that we were looking for. And it was moving everything off-site, off that. Obviously, finding land of that size has been very difficult. And finding a site that we could find that's central to your service network. You know, every city I work with has kind of a core where you really ideally want your garage to be. You don't want to be off on one end. You want to be close to the center where all the trucks have to migrate in the morning, do their services, and then come back during the end of the day. So those alternate sites for just the whole facility were developed a very poor cropping of site selections. There's just nothing really quite fit unless we went way out, either like out the industrial park on 29 or way out Franklin on the east side, up steep hills. So, and actually, so the opportunity to just look for a smaller site, in this case, we indicated that we needed 6 acres for the fleet management group or a motor pool. And that opened up opportunities then for us. So we started looking at other sites for that, and I'll go through those. So that's where we are today. We're going to show you analysis on the sites that we looked at, in particular the ironworks site on West Street and what the cost, and then we'll compare it against the other ones we've been looking at. Okay. So initially we developed a fleet repair garage, and then after the Mercury study, they recommended additional things are changing around, and we also had some time to work with your fleet management group, and we eventually came up with this plan, which I think is an excellent relationship of how they want to operate in terms of they've got their superintendent, their lead mechanics, and how they work with their parts and their vendors, the different kind of trucks and vehicles that come in, the truck washing that happens. So we developed this self-contained building plan just for the fleet motor pool group. And I think it matches what Merck recommended, and architecture, I felt it worked well too. This is the rest of streets, DPW, and their needs right now. We've kind of left them alone, and we're not going to deal with this at this point. We're just looking at the fleet, but we did come up with this. If we could develop a new operation side, this would be the garage and the admin crew area that they would need, and sign shop. All right. And we also developed what we thought would be the ideal layout. If we could find the ideal site for a combined facility, it would be 19 acres. You can see the main garage for DPW. Off to the right, you're seeing the fleet repair garage on its own, and then other cold storage buildings, salt, and parking, stormwater detention, and lots of bulk storage laydown areas as well. So, and our estimate for that was $24.5 million. Now this was done, that last one was done in 21. So that's what we went about looking for. Again, after the fleet study by Mercury, we focused on a 6-acre site. Our study has when we look at these sites, you're going to see some site we evaluated as a complete DPW operation and then others just as the fleet group. We basically looked at areas all around your city. The network, you can see the way that kind of bullseye is the city centroid of service. Ideally, the DPW in that area. You can see some of the sites like on the right, off to the east, Franklin. Those are significantly out of your network, and some of them are actually out of the city limits, so it had to be annexed. The ones on the left are toward the business park. Also further, quite a drive, and you know, obviously you have like 40 trucks a day driving to their destination. Every mile is going to count day after day, year after year, in terms of fuel, wear and tear, and labor time to be driving just to get to their service destination. So if we could find something east of the interstate and the river would be ideal. Okay. Now, next one. So we did look at expanding the Myron Street site, and we later learned that many of the members, the council, are not favorable of buying up land there. We developed these before we got that feedback. So I'm showing you if we did buy more land and we rebuilt the streets garage and then built what you see is the lower part, the fleet garage, and then the other storage, truck wash, fueling, reuse some of the existing buildings. It's still a fairly congested site, even after we bought up a few more parcels of land. Next. We looked at the county highway shop as well on West Street where the Quick Trip is, and there's a truck terminal below that. And of course, the north is Marathon Park and the county fairgrounds. We looked at could we phase in our work, reuse some of these buildings. It is a long, narrow site, though, for the whole operation to be on. But at this point, the county isn't moving anywhere, so we don't know when they're going to move. So that's a big if on that. One thing the West Side plan did indicate, if they had their way, they would redevelop this area as recreation area, something compatible with the fairgrounds and the Marathon County campus area as well. Okay, and we also looked at, well, what if we bought more land than just what the county has? We bought that other site to the east of them on West. Now you can just go on. We call it B2. And then the next one. We looked at Westwood. Nice site from a layout point of view, but it's just the wrong type of building usage for this, what the city has envisioned, more healthcare, education. And then the Satine Drive we looked at, but I've heard that site has been sold. That's not on the table anymore. And this, we're looking out to the east side. Can fit, but you have a steep incline to get up there, and we're on the eastern edge of the city at this point. And likewise with this one too. And actually, this one's actually out of the city limits. It had to be annexed in and brought utilities over. Okay. So this brought us to the Ironworks, and this was brought up as an opportunity to redevelop, reuse. You know, I've heard people refer to this as a blighted area, underinvested. There has been some investment. Obviously, the current owners have put some money into the office area, and they've built a few storage sheds to house some industrial uses there. But the bulk of it is still the original brick industrial building that's not being utilized by them either. And it overall contributes to the whole West Street corridor being a little blighted, if I may say, and underinvested. So we went in and looked at that. We actually went on site, and I see some of you were actually on that site visit and walked around, and you know, it's some nice historical, in general, not registered, but interesting historic era type brickwork and steelwork there. I'm probably going to might jump back to this, but and this is really hard to see. But what we did is there any way you could pinch in to the criteria on the left? Well, I've got one too, but thanks. Well, maybe I'll have to come back to this. What it is, there we go, thank you. Could you push up a bit? There we go, thanks. Yep. So what we do typically and I've done a lot of site selections for counties and cities, is, well, what's important to you when you select a site? And let's identify that criteria and then rank the sites. In this case, it's 1 to 3, 3 being most beneficial. So some of these were based on, we're looking for the whole DPW to move, 19 acres. But the ironworks site, by the time we got to this one, is no, we're just going to look for the 6 acres. So it's a little different than the other ones in that way. But so the ironworks site does have enough. It's 6. We recommended 7, so it's pretty close. It's generally close to the service center of your city network. It has good access to main arterial roads. It's not in a floodplain, or it doesn't have wetlands in it. Environmental justice, at this point, unless I hear back from you, we haven't identified any significant environmental justice issues on this site. You can access the site easily in a heavy truck. You got to imagine these trucks are going to be very loaded with salt or gravel, and so handling inclines is difficult. So you can get to it easily. The site is flat. Whether it fits with your city master plan, that from the face of it, it doesn't, because the West Side master plan, I'm taking that as what the city put forward, unless you think otherwise. They put forward more of recreational use for that site.
Sir, I believe that was a county
Oh, I'm
master
sorry.
plan, not the city county park, so
Okay. It wasn't adopted by the city then? Well, thank you for clarifying that.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Very good. I feel better about it then. Okay. Zoning, yeah, it's industrial. That's what it's zoned. And there are various extra site development costs I'm going to go through when I have a cost spreadsheet on that. All right. Now, just overall, compared to the other sites, I will say while the ironworks site, it's a good site size-wise. It's a good location. We can reuse some of the buildings. Because it has demolition, a large amount of demolition, some of it's probably can't even see, buried foundations too, and we'll have environmental hazards on it. There's going to be a premium for that site compared to the other ones that we've looked at. Yes. So as long as you're aware of that, a cost premium, and we've identified that premium to be about $2.5 million compared to the other sites. So on the other hand, though, it's a blighted site. It's a great potential for being redeveloped, reused, and maybe anchoring that corner of West Street with a better development too. So that's your call as a city, how you want to prioritize that economic development impact. All right, next is looking at this site overall. We're talking about the land to the right of that intersection. You see a white long building. That's a metal building, and then the brick building is below that. So it's technically in 3 parcels. It's all owned by one. It's zoned heavy industrial and medium industrial. We can go to the next one, please. It's very close to the other DPW sites, so if you stay at Myron, operationally, you can shuttle back and forth easily enough between the streets operations and the motor pool operations. Obviously, we identified there's going to have contamination there. That'll be cleaned up. Someone's going to have to clean it up if you're going to reuse this site. And we did look at this in one of our earlier studies, but we were trying to look for 19 acres. So this now we're looking at just the 6-acre program for this, which we'll show next. That's the site on the map. It's close to your center of your service area, good access and getting in and out. The drawbacks, we got to demolish the building and the foundations in certain areas. It has contamination. As far as for future growth, we're pretty locked in. This will be your one shot and for building on there. And we would have to provide a stormwater pond or underground vault to handle the hardscape runoff. Okay. So there's the site, 6 acres, got the red. There actually is that little triangle to the top right is actually part of this. Right now I see the city storing snow collection there. But the more practical area is this 6 acre that we have. So we'll go on to the next. I assume you're all familiar with the site. We have some photos. The site number 1 building is that admin building. We went in there. They've actually done a very nice job of renovating the office. They were renovating the basement. We thought could be good fleet admin offices, converted to crew offices, quarters, lockers, lunchrooms. So excellent potential in that building there. And then 2 is a kind of a neck of a structure connecting the large brick building. And then 3 is the big brick section you see along west there. And then 4 looks like a 1940s, 50s edition steel building, metal sided. But the steel's in great shape, and not too sure about the metal. We have to look at that further. I'm thinking it would have to be refaced, but we could reuse the slab and the structure on that and its general configuration, we thought. 6 is a salt storage building, which could be used by the city. 7 is a shop, but it could be used for storage as well. Okay, I'm going to move to the next. And this is off the GIS, showing the building footprint and the buildings around it as well. The site, these are contour lines. It's a pretty flat site. It drains to the middle. One thing is a potential planning conflict is the county's west side site master plan indicated a use for recreation. So, and then we started doing layouts, what could be done, and there's actually a lot of good options at this site. I think we went through a few initial ones, met with the staff. They all have some good features, and then minor drawbacks. This one kept that long building on the purple is existing, that's being renovated, and then the blue is the motor pool fleet maintenance garage. And our idea is we would get about 20 parking stalls with this building. That our idea is you could take some streets, build trucks, trailers, construction equipment, and keep them there seasonally. Maybe do a switch, winter or summer switch. And that's another reason why this West Street site is more expensive is we've got this extra building we can use, but we're getting more storage, which I'm sure streets could use. So this site would demolish the main brick building, that's 75,000 square feet, and we would demolish the salt shed and put a fuel station there. We would remediate the site and cap it off. We could do a bioswale there. We would have that purple westerly building would be refacaded, but it'd be reused internally as truck storage. And then we'd have the admin crew in a detached building where that admin building is right now. So the other option is to demolish, actually this is the demolition plan for the next option 2, but you can go on next one, please. The other option, and if you could go to the next side plan, is to reuse the admin crew area up front on the corner and attach the fleet maintenance garage up against it so they could just walk through it. The two would be connected, new and existing, and then leave that parking garage off to the west, detached, put the fuel station in between, reuse the salt shed, reuse their storage building. And as an architect who designs a lot of garages, I think this works really well. And I think it's a nice story of reusing some portions of it's a nice balance. We can readily reuse those 2 buildings that we're proposing and the storage buildings on top. So good circulation, good approach. Getting into the service bays is important for them to be able to pull a truck or another vehicle up into the service bays, or getting around to the back side and coming in. We got a truck wash too, because we want to wash the trucks before they get repaired. That worked out. And we reused the admin area. So this one programmatically meets all your functions. And it's on a site where you're using portions of it too, and you're reinvesting a site it's not totally been neglected, but it could do more for the city. And here's a rendering. Could you pinch into that rendering a little bit? I don't think I have another view of it. Okay, just so you can see it better, thanks. What you're seeing on the far right is the admin building. We didn't define it very well, but that's the existing admin building, offices. And you're looking along west there. We would have a receiving loading area next to that, and then the offices for the mechanics. And then, of course, you see the service bays lining up along West Street. And then on the end of that new building is the truck wash, and then the fuel station, and then the renovated garage building for trucks and construction equipment. And then behind that, you'll see the salt shed and the reuse of that shop building for tempered storage. Further behind, you're seeing the county's salt shed. So we're not sure when the county's leaving, but if you timed it right, maybe we could buy that little section too. We were thinking that it's a nice shed, probably last another 15 years. We also just explored, well, what if you were able to buy the next parcel over, which is another 3 acres, and that's with the purple and then the blue. We could try to get almost all of Streets and Fleet on one site on this. So I think buying this site and developing the Fleet would leave you an option to try to get the rest of DPW on here. We haven't really explored it fully, but preliminarily threw it down there. We got all the trucks, we got an admin area, we got the shops, get the salt shed, the fueling. So, and that's good. You have a future out of expanding on this site if you wanted to go for that. And I'll leave it up to you if the city wants to look at other adjacent parcels that we think there's some options there too. So I just talked about this briefly. Now this is much bigger than what we were given direction at least in the last go around. You said just fleet maintenance facility, but I know we started off with the whole group, so we did look at this. I'm not going to go into too deeply, but it can work there too. And just some diagrams of reusing the buildings, and you're looking, the gray section and section with the truck is reusing that existing storage building, and we can fit the trucks in. They can lift their beds up, and we got the height and the drive aisle clearance in there. We did look at other options, but trying to reuse that front building that fronts West Street, the brick building, is it's an awkward plan. You can't fit heavy parking on both sides. It's hard to get into for the trucks. So I, as an architect, I didn't feel this one worked as well. Try to reuse both of the buildings. But when you got rid of that building on West Street, you can just use that metal one. It clears up the side and it works really well. And that's a diagram section through that building on West Street. If you try to reuse that. I think this building would require a lot of demolition down pretty much as a structure, and maybe try to use some of the brick, but we'd have to refinish it all inside, all mechanical, electrical, a lot of floor, concrete repairs as well. So what we did is provide an estimate for option, I'm sorry, it's option 2. I lost track of my options here. The one that I recommended you put the building up against the admin area. Option two, thank you, yeah. So this is the cost estimate, but it doesn't include demolition environmental because of that chart that I had where we were comparing the other costs. I took it out just to be consistent with the other costs on that chart. So we went through and estimated costs to reuse some of the buildings and then new portions. So it's a mix. And if you pinch in, you'll see some of them say reused, and that's where we strip it down to the structure and re-facade it, new HVAC, new plumbing, perhaps some new flooring. But so different cost levels when you reuse it. And then there's a new fuel station and additional salt storage building as well. So I'm going to ask if you could go back. Oh, well, let me just, I'll end here actually. What I understand on your committee or agenda is to seek some action on this. I'll go back now a step here. We were hired in 2018. We did the facility needs study. We then looked at buying more land. Got the feedback that's not going to happen at Myron. We looked at other sites that the city owned. We got feedback, don't touch those sites either. So we looked around your city. The only sites that have enough land are on the far ends and not near the center. So right now, this Ironworks site has a lot of great features, meets your needs. As your consultant, I'm saying it meets the program that you've set out to achieve. Although my caveat is before you, well, we'd like some direction. The next steps that we recommend as your consultant is to do what we call preliminary engineering, is to almost a due diligence of this site. And that would be, we would get a survey, a detailed survey, because we've been working on GIS maps right now. Make sure we get all the easements, all the utilities, any manholes that are out there. Also, we would do a grading plan for stormwater in particular. Would that have to be vaulted? Could we get a pond on site? Look at utilities, where they're coming in. We did see where they are coming in. Are they sufficient size? Do we have to upgrade them? Look at the curb cut changes that we do. Work with your city engineering. Make sure we can put those curb cuts where we want. Not going to have any adverse effects on traffic flow. Get some borings on the site. Look at what the soils are, both in terms of hazardous contamination, but also if we find any sediments or debris from prior demolitions or old foundations that are hanging in there, and that will affect our foundation excavation costs. And look at the site buildings too, the fuel station, salt shed, if we're going to reuse that one or build a second new one. So that's what I'm recommending. I'm taking this to a conceptual level, just enough to compare to the other ones. But if you decide to go with this, this is the next step. And I think this would take about 6 months of analysis and identify what permits you'd have to obtain, what kind of, even look at zoning, if we have to do any zoning changes or look at the zoning ordinances, look at your plan commission. Again, I mentioned city engineering issues. And start that permitting process, at least some of the initial discussions, so we can get feedback. So there's more to happen here, but we've taken it to this point where we think as architects that this is a viable site that merits the city's further consideration. And I think given the, what are we on? We're getting on to year 5 now of this, that this would be a good pathway for you to consider.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrientos, for your presentation. I will open it up for comments now. Yes,
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you. I actually like this site. I think this is a workable compromise. It does get us over the hurdle. You know, for a while, we have been, we've had some spirited debate about what the site should be, and I think that really has stalled our progress, and we know that the facility needs have not gone away. Like, they're the same as they always were or worse. We have difficulty with the space constraints and the logistics of the site we have, and something needs to give, something needs to happen. So I do feel like with the layout we've seen here, option two, the way it's laid out makes sense. I do love the reuse of the office building up front because it has some great historical aesthetics. Rather than just mow down everything on the site, I think it would be a really attractive looking shop, office, admin building. And, you know, then connecting the new with the old, I mean, you know, maybe that, you know, the more blighted building isn't salvageable, but you would still, you know, give a nod to the history of the site by preserving that front building, which really, I think, has a nice look. And then blend the old and the new. I mean, even the site rendering, just, it lays out nice and it looks like it flows nice. So I feel like this is a reasonable compromise. Obviously, it's got a price, but everything we build has a price. I mean, when we look at projects that we've done, you know, it took us 12 years to decide what kind of pools we wanted. And, you know, we ended up reusing the site, but by the time we built them, they were dramatically different than what we started with. And so I feel like this is like the direction we need to go. You know, even if we would have to look at some type of phased or staged construction. So we know what the immediate needs are, and if we would be able to come to own later some of the rest of the parcels to the west, perhaps, you know, we could add things later. It wouldn't have to be a $25 million build right now to get the entire place over there, but I think that starting with this, with an eye toward potential expansion makes sense. I frankly couldn't care less if our plan doesn't dovetail with the county park plan, because their movement on all of that stuff is incredibly slow. And so it just, I think if the private sector owns this, if they're willing to sell it, we know that we've got a viable plan. We can't afford to wait for them to do whatever they're going to do. It could take them 10 years to move. By the time they find an alternate site and build it and then move out, we'd never get our project done. So I really feel like we should at least go to the next design step, get the borings, get the environmentals, do the due diligence, figure out what the real viability of this site is, because it's available to us, right? And I feel like that sets us on a path where we have some forward momentum, rather than, I mean, we've been talking about this for 5 years, and the crew down there is still waiting. So I feel like we would really be in a better spot if we would at least go to the next phase with this option 2 on this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Rasmussen. And that is exactly why I had the agenda advised and had the 2 words put in, possible action, so we could continue moving forward with this if need be. So any other further discussion? Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Lisa. I think that this is a good way to go. How do you perceive then the timeline? You know, you said 6 months later into the year of 2023. How do you see the development then of this, or how, you must have it in your mind,
Yeah.
how this proceeds after the next 6 months or into 2024?
Right.
Or, because I think the city needs to have a sense of the next few years with regard to planning and all, and I'm just curious to see how you, at this point in time, I know that things change, so
Yeah.
you know, nothing is in concrete, but at least to the point of saying, you know, how do you see the future? Is it 3 years or what?
Yeah, design-wise, you know, this preliminary design I could see finishing up in the end of August, hopefully in time for your CIP. And we would have very strong numbers, very defined, like square foot of this material, so much yardage of excavation. And we'd have engineering drawings. We could base it on quantities. And then, as I mentioned, we do all the initial permitting, planning, regulation analysis, and see if anything requires us extraordinary structures or just to meet a certain regulation. So by the end of August, you would have a preliminary design that, say, you know, we're within, you know, 5% plus or minus. We think that we can do this. There's certain areas that we can't develop on because of this and that, we can develop here. We can get through all the regulations, so this can be designed. After that, then typically I find my cities, going through a budgeting process, and hopefully so you approve it in November. You could start in December on a final design effort, and we would, I think on something like this, 9 months of design, so again, probably into, again, August of '24, have a final design, have hard cost estimate breakdown, and you could bid it, well, you probably want to review it again, but probably bid it in December or so of I'm into 24 now, right? Yeah, 24. And I think something like this will allow yourself a year and a half. I mean, the construction may take about 14 months, but there's always stuff at the end. This is a very equipment-intensive building. We're going to have a lot of equipment, heavy fixed maintenance equipment going into this, and we want to make sure that all works and button it up before we move on. So, yeah, that's, I'd say, a 14-month construction period starting. So by the end of '25, then, yeah.
Okay,
That would
thank
be,
you.
yep.
Alder Dini.
Thank you. When we were there, I believe there was across the street, there was a small lot that had some trailers and some Connex type storage there. And then, of course, there's the trucking facility there. So I know we're looking at, possibly trying to squeeze the county's piece. What would happen if opportunity came up across the street? Would you design any differently if we could potentially split the street there?
I think that would be an excellent opportunity to take that over for bulk storage, additional parking, cold storage. There's always traffic barricades, street poles, bulk materials that come in, trees, and especially spring pre-construction time. So I did look at that. I did notice that too across the street. It would be a compatible use to put public works functions across the yard too, or even maybe find some parking, and some of those lots are underdeveloped. There could be parking lots for the employees as well. So yeah, I do find the whole area is, some parcels adjacent to it have good use, potential use for the.
Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Barrientos,
Yeah.
for the information. This all sounds very encouraging, what you've described tonight. And I think, as you mentioned, this has been a long process, 5 years, and hopefully this will proceed smoothly. But just in the realm of caution, should we ever have to backstep and look at other alternatives that are in the work product, and hopefully that will not have to occur. I just had a few questions on observations and some of the materials we had received over the years, and like in today's packet on page 17 of the PDF, there's kind of a scoring matrix of sorts. It's very similar to what's been in past packets, not too exotic. I just had one question about those. In the October 14th, 2021 CISM packet, where these sites were listed and there was a similar scoring matrix. On page 33, there was a site that was redacted in black on page 33 of the PDF, and then on page 35, the entire column had been removed. And the reason I bring that up is it just struck me as I had never seen anything just redacted from work material like that. Do you or Public Works happen to know why that would have occurred? And I do have the document in front of me, if the chair would allow me to present it to Mr. Barrientos.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, please refresh my memory on that. It looks like the Cleveland Street site was taken out. That would be my guess. It's the Cleveland site, but there's a lineup here.
Yeah, it was. I can speak to that a little bit too. That was done, Tom, for that meeting. I don't know that that was the appropriate way to handle that, after the council had told us not to take any further action on that site. I think because that we did investigate that site, when we first started this process, I think that information should be included as the report gets amended. But I think it needs to be made clear that that action was taken and that staff has not further investigated that site since that's happened. And I think you'll see that on the cost estimates when we see the comparisons too. Even those other sites that we looked at, these large sites, we haven't gone back and tried to update cost estimates and tried to revisit those sites because that's nothing that the committee wanted us to spend our time on. And that's why this is coming to this committee very specifically. I mean, if there's something in the report that you want clarified that you're not comfortable with, I'm happy to talk with you about that and make those clarifications and things like that. I think redacting that information, I think is just, is probably, in my professional opinion, is not probably the way to go. I think we should just have that information documented, was looked at one time, and then if there's further notes or anything on that information that we need to identify to make sure that everybody's aware of decisions that were made since then, I'm open to those as well, so.
Thank you. I think that solves the mystery of the mystery redactions.
Okay.
And yes, I just never seen anything taken out of work product like that. And I would note that that was the first CISM meeting after the September 14th, 2021 council meeting, where it's my understanding that the council took a formal vote and action to remove Cleveland Avenue from the feasibility study. So I had presumed either the consultant or staff had redacted it. I just, there had been no confirmation today internally. I sent an email. I think it kind of answers that question. So thank you. And then, if I may, just a couple other questions on that Cleveland site and the material. So it had been redacted after the council vote, and on page 4 of the PDF today, it says that the council did that in large part over serious environmental justice concerns. When I looked at the unredacted, uneliminated matrix of things tonight in the packet on page 18 of the PDF, it gives some cost estimates on the various sites. And one thing that had kind of caught my eye was in the environmental row for Cleveland Avenue, it notes $0 for potential environmental costs. And what kind of, the reason I'm asking about this is because if you go to the DNR database, 1300 Cleveland Avenue is an open state ERP site, and they had identified kind of serious widespread soil contamination on the site. And in addition to that, the DNR, because there had been PFAS identified in the soils, has requested that the city now undergo PFAS groundwater testing. So I was very pleased to hear that when we remediate all of that, it's going to cost $0, because that really surprised me. Now, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek there, but after the first round of testing where that contamination was identified, the city had a committee of the whole meeting in February of 2021, and its environmental consultant, GEI, for that city-owned property had provided cost estimates of what remediation may cost on that site. I would note, though, that that was after the first round of testing and prior to the second. The second round of testing had identified even more contamination. But if I recall correctly, that GEI's top-end estimate in those committee of the whole documents from February 2021, that was 525,000, which would likely be much lower than we could anticipate today because of the results we got from that second round of testing. So that was something that presented confusion in the matrix. And I mean, if those facts should be borne out with that documentation the city possesses, I think it would be encouraging to see that updated, much like you had done with the environmental justice scores. So those were a couple of the concerns or questions I had, but very encouraged to see the direction things are going, and thank you for the information.
Okay. Would you like me to update this, or?
As far as, you mean 1300 Cleveland Avenue?
Yeah, the demolition, or the environmental cost at the 525.
I don't know if that really would be necessary. I guess I could leave it up for discussion since it's no longer on the table.
Yeah, we kind of stopped, as
I mean,
Eric said, we stopped
I don't see why,
the other.
personally, I don't see why we would want to spend any more money on it since it's not on the table. Lisa?
Thank you. We asked that question too. When that data first came out, we asked how the cost could be zero because we knew that we wanted to clean it up to residential standards. And I thought the outcome of our discussion then was that it was $0 because we were making the assumption that by the time any garage project would start, that the cleanup would have already been done as a separate project. Like, we knew regardless of what it was going to be, we were going to clean up that site, whether it was the garage or houses or whatever. So that really would have been in the past by the time this other project took flight. That was, I think, where we came out. But I think as a committee, we've all kind of agreed by consensus that 1300 Cleveland has become irrelevant. We're not going to use it, we don't want to use it, and that's why we're here with this other site. So I think it's important that we move forward with this site to the next phase. And if I put my money hat on from the Finance Committee, I think that even though there's a premium with some of the elements of this site, because of the timing of this whole thing, it really does give us time to plan for the borrowing first, and then as adjacent TID districts close, 6 particularly, I think that's something that we would want to look at in finance to see if we could reclaim that extra year of increment from that closed district, perhaps. And one of the things you can use that for is blight remediation. Well, that's what this kind of is. So it may be possible for us to capture some dollars based on the timing of this whole thing that we ordinarily might not be able to. So I think that we have some future planning to do on the money side, but I think from a viability standpoint, I really think that we should go to the next phase of the design and the due diligence on this site, so with the option 2 as it's drawn here. So I'll make a motion that we do that we select this site and configure it as option 2, the way the preliminary design looks, and then move to that next phase of design and complete that due diligence, and then have that brought back here so that we can determine that if that's going to be our final option, we'll know a lot more then. So I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Alder Rasmussen. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Okay, thank you, Alder Gisselman, for seconding that. All those in favor of moving forward with this project would signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. I guess that passes unanimously, and I would just like to add one thing. These three Alder Rasmussen, these three alders and myself, we went and toured that facility, and that office building, there's very, very minimal that probably needs to be done to it. It is very, very modern, very upgraded, so and as you say, it's going to, maintain a history in this area. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
So on to,
Done? Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
thank you very much, yes, sir. I'm glad I put in there the possible action part, yes. Well, we've been doing this for long enough, we need to keep moving forward. So item number 3, the consent agenda. Does everything look okay in the consent agenda? And if so, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve it.
Thank you, Alder
Second
Hinkie.
that.
Thank you, Alder Denny. The consent agenda has been, all those in favor of approving this consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that too passes unanimously. Item number 4, discussion and possible action on authorizing sale of 1515 Curling Way. Alan?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I mean, it's in the staff report, but we're recommending that the city put this up for sale.
Any discussion? Any motion?
I'll move that we approve the sale as recommended.
Can I, oh, I'll second. But then I have a question, Al, how do we just come to acquire this little piece? Or do we own parts of it to the north and south, or is it just this little sliver?
The parcel to the north is owned by the railroad, and they own that. Excuse me, to the south is owned by the railroad. You can see the railroad has a building on that, and they kind of use this 1515 now as a parking lot, so they're kind of using the city property. So it would be, that would be their intended use, from what I understand, is to put their parking lot there. To the north there, the city does still own another lot. We've been told that they're not interested in that lot. I mean, we could sell that at a future date. And then if you look, there's a small sliver in there, and then there's the furthest north is a small detention pond owned by the city. So we would not, I mean, we would not look to sell that detention pond area. That's part of our stormwater maintenance. But there is a sliver to the north owned by the city.
But we suspect that 1515 would likely be purchased by the user. Is that,
Correct.
okay.
They've expressed interest.
Any other further discussion? Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to sell the 1515 Curling Way. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, thank you, and that too is unanimous. Item number 5, discussion and possible action on the first revision to the state municipal agreement for North 18th Street to South 52 to South Street.
So the DOT provided this, we had an initial state municipal agreement, which had the cost share of the city at $218,000. When that was revised to the city's benefit, the cost share is now $148,816. This is part of the STP Urban, the bill project that came out for the kind of the rush funding to get projects bid in 2022. This has been bid. It's out, and construction is expected this spring to get 18th Street paved from 52 to sell. So that's good news for the city, and it's also a cost reduction for us too. So I'd recommend we approve the revised SMA.
Thank you, Alan. Any discussion?
I'll move that we approve.
Thank you, Alder Hinkie. Second. Thank you, Alder Denny.
Second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the revised SMA for 18th Street to Highway 52. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And thank you, that too passes unanimously. Item number 6, discussion and possible action on the state municipal agreement for Business Campus Trail East-West Connector Innovation Way to 72nd Avenue. Mr. TJ.
All right, so this is for another trail out in the industrial park. It would be connecting to where the 72nd Avenue Trail that will be constructed this upcoming year, and then it would run all the way over to Innovation Way. We applied for this about a year ago before we saw what these increases to our construction projects would be, more specifically what the 72nd Avenue Trail came out to be. So Our estimated project cost was right around $1.2 million, which we were granted. However, seeing the way the 72nd Avenue Trail bid came in, we reran those costs once we received this notice of the grant award. And this trail now connecting from the 72nd Avenue Trail to Innovation Way is upwards of $4 million. So the grant is much less favorable. So I provided a couple of different options through discussions with the DOT that they may be willing to entertain to reduce the cost and the scope of the project. So the first one would be running from 72nd Avenue to 80th Avenue. Another would be going to 84th Avenue. And then a third option would be going from 84th Avenue out to Innovation Way. These still would be above what the original projected cost would be, so we're not getting back to that 80-20 cost split. But we would still receive a considerable amount of grant monies towards improving our trail network out in the industrial park. One other option that I don't have on here because I was waiting for feedback from the DOT was finishing the portion of 72nd Avenue that we removed this year because of the cost increase that we saw. So we would possibly apply for a scope change to construct the portion from Stewart Avenue down to Packard Drive into Sunnyvale Park that was removed from the 72nd Avenue Trail. The DOT was cautious in saying that that would be approved. They don't really have the jurisdiction to approve or disapprove. That would have to go to the Federal Highway Association or administration. So it's a possibility. That project is about $700,000, including design. So we wouldn't get that full $1 million grant, but it would get back to the 80-20 cost share. So our portion would be around $120,000, and the grant would be for about $580,000. So that's another option. Or, if we want to leave the state municipal agreement the way it is for the entire portion of the trail, that's also an option. I'm just looking for some guidance of how we would like to proceed.
Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. Our portion of this, I think, was expected to be funded with tax increment dollars. And so, that said, I think that having this trail system out there, this area presents challenges for us because there is the opportunity for conflict between heavy trucks, vehicles, or private passenger vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes. And so we favored these trails out there to eliminate some of that conflict and make this safer because this particular area of the business campus does actually find itself seeing traffic from bikes and pedestrians and things from the adjacent subdivisions. So it makes sense that we would continue with the trail, even if this trail needed to be built in segments like we're building the River Edge Trail. So if we started with, with TJ's recommendation, say we went from 72nd to 84th, in future years, we could apply for additional grant segments and then further and expand that trail as we go. We just wouldn't have the full thing completed, and I think that is a sensible approach. And then as we have dollars to match and as we can secure grant funding, I feel like it would make sense. The need for the trail, even though the prices and the bid prices are way worse, the need for the trail isn't going away. So I do feel like maybe our best option is to get the first leg done, the 72nd to 84th Avenue, and push forward from there, because that does allow us to leverage the maximum amount of the grant dollars as well, without cutting our grant back to only $500,000. I mean, at least we're getting the most that we can out of the grant opportunities. It seems like that's what the recommendation was based on, so.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, Alder Gisselman.
Well, I agree, Lisa, but I think I also like the segment from Packard Drive, into Sunnyvale, because I think that opens up that whole Packard Drive. A lot of walkers are there, a lot of bicycles, and that gets you into around back towards Stewart Avenue again, so that you can create some loops, I think, with, and also some loops going west on Packer Drive. And I sort of favor that. I don't know how we can, mush those together, but I like that, because I think that opens up more recreation, more destinations, either Sunnyvale Park or the whole, and then that brings in the, what's the development off of 48th to
Strawberry
Strawberry
Fields.
Fields, and that opens up that whole opportunity for those, because there's a lot of people in that area. So I kind of like that, that segment, if that's possible. I'm just a little bit of a vote for that segment. But is there a safe way to get from, because that's all concrete, or how would you run under the highway there on Highway 29? That's kind of tight in there, isn't it?
Right, so we completed that design as part of the 72nd Avenue Trail. So this would more or less just be, picking up where we left off, and this would probably be a quicker process because most of the design is done if we did just extend south from Stewart Avenue. But we would have to build a retaining wall underneath the Highway 29 overpass to get from Stewart
Okay,
to.
so that design, so you know how to do that already, okay.
There is there's always TAP grant funding cycles. So, we would look to apply for whichever segment, in the future, we could apply for, finishing 72nd Avenue from Stewart to Packer in the next cycle. Or if you chose to do that, we could apply for this in the next cycle. So there is continuous cycles with the bill money. There is more money coming for TAP funding. So the next cycle, we could just ask for funding for this. And I think it would score high because it's connection, to existing trails. So I think connecting trails that they've already funded through the government. So I think that would be a good application. Just to let you know, there is possibility for more money in the future.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Alder Asmussen.
I do feel like a scope change on an existing application is a gamble, because that gives them the option to say no, and then we get nothing. So I feel like I also favor the leg to finish the 72nd Avenue leg and get it to Sunnyvale. But I feel like if we submitted that as a separate project, our chances of success are way higher. So we get a larger segment. If we go from 72nd to 84th, we get a longer segment, and we get to maximize our grant dollars in this cycle because the scope isn't changing. But I think if we try to, even if we try to dial down the grant that we receive, trying to take that approval and transfer it over to something different, we may not fare well in that process.
Thank you. I tend to agree. If you don't want to break the plane in midstream, so I think that would be a good idea to, as described earlier, go in increments. Any Alder Denny, Alder Henke, any further comment? Alder Denny.
I just have a question. I think you explained it here that the calculation was off primarily by our consultant. So it's a factor of 4. Is that consulting firm still involved in this moving forward? What is our confidence level there?
That consultant was just part of the 72nd Avenue Trail. So moving forward with the east-west connection, it would be a completely different consultant, or it would go out to RFP, and we would choose a consultant, not necessarily the same consultant.
So the recommended piece that the 72nd to 84th is going to cost the city how much?
Roughly $1.2 million.
So I guess another option would be to postpone this entirely.
Yeah. There's nothing saying that if we do ask for a scope change to extend to 72nd, that we couldn't, and if it's denied, that we couldn't ask for a scope change to just go from 84th to 72nd. We could, ask for several scope changes and see if anything's available.
is the primary concern the amount of our share? Is that, I mean, if we're looking to reduce our share and yet maximize grant dollars, then the leg from 72nd to Innovation Way shortens up our contribution, but it still gets a segment completed.
What would be our contribution?
Well, on his chart here, it shows 251, 414.
Yeah.
So, I mean, then, you know, we're.
Well, that's what with the
Oh,
original.
that's, okay, because I'm
submittal
just looking at your fiscal impact on your, in the packet here, so.
was. Right. So
Okay.
that original one is,
Well, and that really isn't poor work product on the part of the consultant, right? Wasn't that based on inflationary pressures?
well,
It's
most of the
factor
change-
5 for the city. I mean, quarter
Right,
mil is
right.
a no-brainer, but for 1.2, and that's a lot of money for where we're sitting right now.
and the boardwalk is really the portion that was far over the estimated cost, and that was primarily due to the soils and then inflationary, you know, lumber was extremely expensive, and then the geopiers that we had to dig further than what was expected into the marsh area is what really drove the cost. The rest of the cost estimate was pretty much intact except for about 4 items. But again, as you can see, all this green on the campus trail map, that's all wetlands. So we're going to have several segments of boardwalk for this east-west connector trail, and that's what's driving the cost.
Had any of this been budgeted prior for this year?
Our share was.
Just the 250?
We, all we have to do for this year would be design, so we haven't even gone out to RFP yet. So there's really nothing in the budget this year. We can hire our consultant mid-year and not actually hire them to begin the work until we have it in the budget for next year. Design would actually start next year.
In '24.
Correct.
And then we could do a TID analysis to see where we'd be at for the length of the segment and our share then as well, to see if that is a feasible expense in that area. Finance could handle that.
Alder Giswin.
So there's no road between Innovation Way and 84th? Am I seeing that right?
Well, no, that's all wooded.
Is there a city plan for that, or are we waiting for development? Because wouldn't that be better to have a trail / attached to the road when, I get the idea from 84th Innovation Way, I get that, but I'm just saying, you know, wouldn't that come when we build the road and the attached trail, or is that too far out? Maybe we don't even see when that's gonna happen.
If I could add, I believe that we're only going from like 44th, 48th to 72nd Avenue. And if I could
Well-
add to that, when you're going from 72nd to 84th, couldn't you just attach that onto the street as a bike lane or something?
It's narrow right-of-way. Along International, are you thinking? Or-
No, not along, as you're going, you're talking about 72nd to 84th, that would be, and I could be totally wrong. Is that Stewart
Highlander?
Avenue or that goes out there?
Highland is to the south of where our projected trail is, or International is to the north.
Okay,
Again, there's ditches out there, there's no curb and gutter or sewer, so.
Sure.
That's all costs that would have to be implemented as well. And then limited right-of-way, so there'd be right-of-way acquisition. This is projected to be on all city property. Because of the wetlands, it's unbuildable.
I can kind of just add too that where you see the trail, the red going from 84th to Innovation Way, that primarily follows the utility corridor that was put through the woods. There's sewer and water over that, so that's already been cleared. And the sewer and water's put in there, so that kind of follows. It basically would be a trail over the top of that sewer and water corridor that goes down through there. There was some design for Innovation Way to continue, to hook up with, what is that little spur road there, TJ?
80th?
Yeah, Development Circle, if I can't read that, I apologize, but, so there, but, you know, there is a large 40-acre parcel on the end of the cul-de-sac on Innovation Way that may be, you know, I think, community development is marketing that right now as one big parcel. So if that one big parcel gets sold with a big user, then that Innovation Way would not continue through. So I think there's some unknown with that road continuing, Gary.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that.
Yes, Alder Hinkie.
I mean, as a pedestrian, I would vote for Innovation Way to 84th Avenue. I mean, I didn't think that'd be the nicest walk through the woods there, or bike ride through the woods. I like 72nd to 84th. If we're worried about cost, you know, do we just go 72nd to 80th then? I think both of them give us nice loops there. That's all I have.
Is that a motion?
I agree. As long as we do something and take advantage of the grant, I'm on board. I just think we need to start and then section it in as we can. So I'm good with whatever you guys feel we should do.
I'll make a motion to go to do TJ's recommendation, go from 72nd to 84th.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to follow TJ's recommendations on moving forward from 72nd to 84th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
And that would pass 4-1. Thank you. On to item agenda 7. Discussion and possible action on state municipal agreement for West Wausau Avenue from Stevens Street to North 10th Street. Alan?
Yes, so staff applied for funding to reconstruct West Wausau Avenue from Stevens Drive to 10th Avenue through the SDP Urban Funding. And there was a competitive process through the MPO, Wausau MPO, Wausau Area MPO. And we received that funding through as part of the extra money with the bill again. So that was good news. As you can see, the city's obligation would be $649,000. I'd like to point out that that $649,000 is primary utilities, which is non-participating, that the DOT does not pay for. So the grant is actually to reconstruct the road is 80/20, 80 SDP urban funding and 20% city. So that used to be 50/50, but the SDP now has gone 80/20, so it's a better cost share for us. So this would, just as for general purposes, this would be more than likely a 2026 construction.
This is Highway 52, correct?
No,
No?
this is West Wausau Avenue
Oh.
from Stevens to 10th.
Oh, yeah, okay.
This is,
Sure. Yeah.
it runs right in front of the Wausau West High School.
Yep, okay, gotcha. And even after the 80/20, the 649,000 would be our share.
Correct, that's primarily sewer and water replacements. The roadway portion, you know, the curb gutter, sidewalk, road is 80/20.
Okay. Yes, Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I am so glad to see that we got this award because this stretch of road is terrible. And it's in Alder Watson's district, but I think she and I both have been contacted by residents in the adjacent neighborhood over its condition, wondering when, if ever, it would be rebuilt. And it's bad enough that I don't think it's even a candidate for overlay. I think we looked at that 2 years ago and it just didn't fit the bill. It needs to be redone. So the fact that we're getting some help to pay for that is awesome. So I will move that we move this project forward and approve the SMA.
All right, thank you, Alder Rasmussen.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Alder Hinkie. Motion has been made and seconded to go ahead with the municipal agreement for Wausau West Avenue to Stevens Street, Stevens Drive, North 10th Avenue. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That has passed unanimously. On to item number 8, discussion and possible action renaming east-west segment of South 18th Avenue between South 17th Avenue and South 18th Avenue. Alan, again.
Yes, so I'm sure some of you are aware that it's kind of an odd situation where 18th intersects to 18th. So it's kind of just been hanging out there, I guess. The area is in the midst of redevelopment, and it just would be a good time to clean that up. And I think we have, an opportunity here. It has been, the Lindells, or the Lindell family, has been the owner of the area, of the property, for quite some time. And I don't know if Mr. Schofield wants to step up and talk about it a little bit, but as you know, just a little history with it. The Crossroads Cinema used to be there, and there used to be Crossroads County Market. So it is their request that the street be renamed Crossroads Way, because I believe that's how the area is being marketed to, is the Crossroads Way area, or the Crossroads development. So that is, we did check with the county. There is not a road in the county that's called Crossroads, so they are okay with, I checked Bill Hebert inspection, so as far as that goes, the county's okay with it, so it's up to you guys what you want to do, but that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I actually like this idea. I think that it does give a little nod to the first developments that were out there. A lot of things were marketed out there as crossroads because of the intersection of 51 and 29. And, I think it does just give a little nod to things that were there before. And it then clears up the 18th Avenue conundrum. So I'll make a motion that we approve the new name.
Thank you, Alder Rasmussen.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Alder Gisselman.
I have a question.
Any further discussion?
Does, west of 18th, is that a public street that goes, like, for instance, in front of County Market, or is that just the street? Is that the two segments of this,
West of 18th,
west of 18th?
that is just it's a big private entrance into the,
Just the parking lot
Correct.
into the.
correct,
into
the
that- into
the
that
right-of-way,
development.
correct, the right-of-way ends right there. So that's just like a big private driveway to the rest of the developments to the west.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to rename a street to Crossroads Way. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that too passes unanimously, and I think we will go on to our next item number 9, and presentation of staff on snow plowing operations. Dustin.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here tonight. I will try and talk fast so we can get to everyone's favorite item, adjournment. So I just wanted to cover our winter maintenance policies real quick and go through it, and then give you guys a chance if you have any questions for me or concerns from residents that you've been hearing that I could maybe answer for you. To start with, I just wanted to give a quick acknowledgement to my staff. I have a whole bunch of wonderful employees that have been out there getting the streets clear this year. We have had 14 snow events so far this year. So they've been working hard to get that clear. The way we respond to our snow events is progressive, so there's no one magic formula where I can give you a list of how we're going to respond every time. It's very progressive based on whatever the weather does. There are 3 facets to it. The first is our plowing. So we have several different routes out there kind of identified as our priority routes. So when it comes to plowing, those are all the streets that we try and maintain and keep open throughout the storm, make sure that everyone can get where they have to go. If you go on the city's website, we do have those maps listed there for any citizens or anyone that would want to see that. And the purpose of those routes is to make sure that everyone can get where they need to go, keep businesses functioning, and even our residents, most of those priorities will try and limit them to about 3 blocks that they might have to travel before they could get to a plowed street. The next portion of it is our treatment of the streets. So we have a couple different things we do. We have our salt routes, which are the routes that were identified as high traffic areas, school zones, hospital areas, any of those type of roads that we really put salt on to try and get the pavement down to bare all winter long. We also have sand routes, so any of the streets that are not identified in our salt routes are a sanding route. And those streets, we don't apply salt to, we only apply our sand. And the purpose is just to maintain some traction. When we do get times when we have snow and ice buildup, stuff like that, we put the sand down. It gives us traction to allow people to navigate the streets safely. And then we let Mother Nature do its work. As the weather permits, it warms up and we can go back out and we can kind of scrape that stuff, get it off the road, and then eventually you may see bare pavement through the city, but sometimes it just takes a little while. We also have sidewalk routes. Those are more routes that we use sand on. We don't typically put salt on them unless it's a dire emergency where we really have to get some ice gone. Salt kind of kills people's lawns, stuff like that, so if we just threw salt on it all the time, we'd be dealing with dead grass all over the city. And then we also put sand barrels all over the city, so if citizens are having issues with slippery spots, whether it be on their sidewalks, the end of their driveway, like when they're backing in and out, stuff like that, we have them all over the city where they can go and grab some sand, sprinkle it down to give themselves some extra traction. And we also keep a stockpile at the Public Works facility on Myron Street, so anyone's welcome to come down, get a bucket full or whatever so they can take care of it. And the last phase is our snow storage. So as winter continues, we start getting buildups along our street, starts hindering visibility, stuff like that. You'll see the crews out there scraping it away with the graders, front end loaders, stuff like that. And then we haul it away to our snow dumps where we store it through the rest of the winter. And then again, let Mother Nature melt it off and we can collect some of the garbage, stuff like that out of it and get it cleaned up. That kind of covers what we do. Is there any questions from the council? Anyone got something that they'd always been wondering? And I guess one other thing before we go to questions, I just wanted to invite any of the elders or anyone who has not taken a ride with one of our plow drivers, please feel free, if you can spare some time, come on down, we'll get you a ride. I've had a chance to ride with some of our drivers and also drive a truck myself in our winter kickoff event, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of stuff going on in that truck. It's pretty impressive to watch some of these senior guys, the way they can navigate the city and do that stuff. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer.
Alder Denny, go ahead.
Thank you. We've got a lot of odd lots around the city. How do you manage the sidewalk snow removal of, say, 700 Jackson? I think there's a lot sitting over there. Do we send someone over there with a snow blower, or how do you do that?
Yeah, when we have any of the city lots that have sidewalks or some of the ones where we have agreements to maintain, we have a couple of skid steers in town, and we have multiple attachments. So we have snow blowers, plows, and then also brooms. And so we'll send them out every time we have trucks plowing, stuff like that, and they can go kind of clear those sidewalks. We do have parking lots as well, city parking lots, so we have equipment, front-end loaders that'll clear those as well.
I have some questions. I guess you kind of answered one of my questions is, I live on a street where there's no sidewalk and it's a side street and there's no curb and gutter. So you just answered my question about why you don't throw salt down there, because there's no drainage there and it would just kill the grass.
Yep.
But that being said, is there any way you can get those, I understand, the importance of keeping the main streets open, but I also understand the importance of my street, because up until just the last couple of days, it has been glare ice, so anybody can't walk their dog. We don't have sidewalks. Anybody can't walk their dog. The mailman, it's a hazard for anybody doing deliveries up and down the street, mail packages, what otherwise. And I just wonder if there's any plan to better take care of these side streets.
When it comes to that, I know the reason why we don't just throw salt everywhere besides the grass, it's a pretty big environmental concern. So the salt kills our water, stuff like that. So it's just not good ecologically to want to put a lot of salt on. When it comes to the side streets, our goal really is to work with Mother Nature. So we throw the sand to give you some traction, but then as we get this warm weather, like for the next few days on the forecast, we have into I think the beginning of next week, we have some warmer weather. So then on those side streets, what we do is we send our equipment back out. We have some of our heavier trucks and then like the graders and stuff like that. And we try and get out there and scrape that off and really let the sun and the weather and stuff take care of that and try and get some of that off so that the streets can be bare again.
Good, I look forward to seeing that. And one more question is, I live just off of Stewart Avenue there on 22nd Place, and there are some city-owned sidewalks that have yet to be maintained since the last snowstorm, and I don't know if it's too late because it's all frozen, or once it warms up, you can get there and do it.
I'll have to check on some specific locations there. We've had the crews out. I know we have, one of our pieces was down, so we might have been a little behind on some of them.
I would be guessing from 22nd to 17th, there was stretches in there where there's houses that have been torn down in the past, and now the city owns those properties.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can add in a little bit there. So engineering does keep track of sidewalk complaints, snow complaints, and so if anybody does have a complaint, just call engineering and we look into who has the maintenance of it. Whether, if it's a city, we'll obviously call DPW. Sometimes it's parks. Mostly it's individuals that we give letters to and such. But if you ever have a concern with sidewalks not being plowed or maintained, call engineering.
Okay, I was just walking from the YMCA over here the other day, and the street wasn't plowed here, and the director for the landing was walking that patch. He says, yeah, I called the Parks Department on it, or she said, if they can't get here, we could do it ourselves if they let us. So, yes, Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I will say that having been handling commentary from residents about this subject for a long time, there's a marked difference this year than there's been in past years. And I get that we have had a little bit of a seasonal shift with thaw, refreeze, freezing rain, and that's always a problem. Mm-hmm. But I have also received feedback from, and I seldom receive side street complaints. I mean, our residents are realistic with their expectations. They believe when it snows, we need to plow, and that they don't expect salt and they don't expect bare pavement, but they do expect that we will adequately sand curves, corners, and hills and intersections. And so now we've got a situation on side streets, and I've kind of been observing it citywide. A lot of them are like glass. Some of them have as much as 4 inches of buildup. And so just in the last couple weeks, I've received feedback within my own neighborhood where we had a mail carrier fall. We've had delivery drivers that have fallen trying to get out of their vehicle and get to these houses because the mail receptacles are attached to the home. They're not at the street. So they can't just stop the truck and dump the mail. They have to walk these areas. And so my street has no sidewalk also, and it's been super difficult. Not just the neighbors, it's professionals that are trying to serve these areas. And so I had sent you an email, and I feel like this year there's a different level of application on the sand in some cases. Now in the last couple weeks it's been better. I've noticed more sand down, but the other thing with our weighted sand that we use now is it burns through and it lays there. So it's underneath the buildup. And so barring the natural melting and regrading and rescraping, then we go right back to thaw and refreeze with holes in it. So there's just been a marked difference this year. I know that we've had 14 snow events, but a couple of those snow events came on the weekend, and they were not high-volume snow events. And when that happened, it took until Monday to see the crew out. Like, they did not bring the crew in on the weekend to get ahead of it in any way. And so that contributed to some of the buildup that we have, because cars drove over this stuff for 2.5 days. And then they went out and they did some plowing and sanding, and by then, that's where we have, and so we're thawing and refreezing now the same 4 inches of essentially ice. Mm-hmm. And so that has yielded more complaints this season than what I've been fielding historically in the past. So, it's not that some people's expectations are unrealistic. I think, there's a balance to be had there, but I also think that, even when we have a low volume snow event, if it comes on Saturday, if we have a situation where people might rather not work Saturday, I don't think that we can afford to leave it sit till Monday and send them out like a normal duty, because, we're creating some problems. I mean, we've got a situation now where a lot of streets in our city feel like logging roads. And it's not the road underneath, it's everything that's been built up and now is frozen in this hodgepodge of a pattern. And that's not good. I had a resident call me a week and a half ago and ask me how the city can go out and enforce on people's sidewalks when our streets are ice rinks. I didn't have a good answer for that. And, I don't know that I need one. I think it's a rhetorical question, but something is definitely different this year. And I get that they want to use best practices and apply less material, because less material is less expensive and it's a little more green friendly, but we got to have some balance there. And so, they just can't afford to leave it sit. And now we're going to go the rest of the winter probably with trying to grade off this mess that we've created in the last month. And I think that actually is worse for the crew, because, then your plow driver comes by when this all refreezes, and that cannot be a smooth ride in the plow when the street is that poor. I mean, those side streets are awful. The main drags are great. I mean, we don't have any problem on the salt route, but something is definitely different on the secondaries. And I feel like we got to get ahead of that.
I think this winter was, like you said, the weather really kind of hit us hard. If you would like, we can change our directives. Typically on snow events, when we only get little amounts, we're bringing in just the salt crews to get the mains, and we do wait, because if we bring the whole crew on the weekend, obviously that is going to add a lot of cost. If we want to change our directive and start doing that, for sure, we can definitely, do that. I just,
Well, we budget for that. I mean, we have in our budget, we have light snow years and horrible snow years, and over time, they balance themselves out. So what we save in a good year, we spend in a bad one. We've proven that. But I also think that we can't afford to risk safety. I mean, we can't wait until we wreck a bunch of cars and then send the crew out, or we have a bunch of slip and fall type situations. I mean, we have neighborhoods where people are trying to get out and walk. They're trying to, be active. They're trying to get to school in some cases. And when you have to traverse that side street and you can't even stand up on it, that's a problem. And so, I'm seeing that this year where I didn't see it as much in the past. And so I think sometimes that delay is maybe causing that problem, because I just did not take these complaints before, and I've taken a lot of them since December. So something is definitely different.
Thank you, Alder Rasmussen, and I would add that I am in full agreement with that. But with that being said, I would also like to, commend your department for the job they've done this year, because I've often referred to my neighborhood as a forgotten neighborhood. I'm sure everybody has heard that in the past, and it has not been forgotten this year. It's been plowed in a timely fashion. And I say that because of not just because of neighborhood, but because of safety concerns, because in the area where I live, we get 2 lanes of snow shoved in our intersections from Sherman Street there, and sometimes it's impossible to get in and out of. Any other comments? Alder Gisselman.
A question, maybe this is for the county. How do you perceive the need for, when Granite Peak is in full snow coverage of certain parts of the city?
we just have to try and deal with it when it comes. We've seen that where certain areas of the city are
Because the-
covered,
It's a topic of,
Yeah, and
it's a topic of, especially on that, but I know that in certain parts of the city gets it more than others, especially the southeast side, well, the southern part of the city, I would imagine. But I think it's becoming a real concern now that Granite Peak's going to even be more snow coming off of that mountain. And I was just curious about how we approach that, because sometimes it's more than an inch. It can accumulate, especially in certain neighborhoods. I'm just curious.
Yeah, like I said, we take it as it comes. When the streets start building up like that, we'll get out there, plow it, clear it off. As far as, I know there's been discussions in the past with Granite Peak and stuff, and I guess I can't speak to, decisions that have been made there, or I'm not sure how to even kind of answer that one.
Yeah, in the past, I've had specific conversations when it's come to my attention that there's significant areas that we know there's not snow coming down, but we're having to send out plow trucks. We have contacted them directly, and they have been very responsive about shutting the machines down, until wind shifts or dies down, or, because that's really what carries, Gary. But there are periodic times, where we do get the dustings, things get a little bit slippery, and we manage that. But if it gets excessive, then, and I don't know if that was last year, the last time I had spoken with them over the last winter or the winter before, but nothing so far this winter. I haven't spoken with them, but.
I think it's mostly on the highways, coming quickly into
Yeah.
squall
Yeah, and they put those signs up on the highways. I know that they had worked with Highway, with Jim, to kind of figure out how they're going to do that. And they put up some electronic signs to, and that's how the county had addressed it, so.
And I feel your pain, Alder Gisselman, because there's been many mornings when I used to haul mail and I was out on the streets at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and that whole stretch of highway was all ice. And as soon as you got past where they were spreading snow, it was beautiful. And there's been a lot of accidents and people in the ditches over the years because of that. So I guess, any more comments on, yes, Alder? Thank you.
I'd just like to bring up, one person reached out to me about north side of Stewart Avenue, getting those snowbanks moved down. They're building up pretty high.
Yep, we're
Just-
currently in operations. We've been moving around the city,
Yep.
clearing
just
banks up, yep.
Put that out there. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other further discussion? If not, we'll move on to item agenda 10.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Alder Hinkie has made a motion to adjourn. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Denny. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we will be adjourned. Thank you, everybody.